Joining us now is Senator Angus King, an independent from Maine. Senator, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Allison. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Did you hear what President Trump said in mocking Christine Blasey Ford last night at the rally?
Yeah, I watched it 2 or 3 times. It made me feel sort of sick. I don't understand why he felt he had to do that. Ironically, last week he characterized her testimony as, I think he used compelling or credible or something like that. And to turn around and turn her powerful testimony into a political rally punchline, I don't know what to say. I mean, I think Jeff Flake, appalling is an appropriate adjective.
Do you think that President Trump's behavior and words make it harder for the Jeff Flakes and Susan Collinses and Lisa Murkowskis of the world to make a decision by Friday?
I think they do. I think that was, if he was trying to, I mean, everybody's essentially talking about an audience of 3 here. And I don't think that was a way that would be calculated to win over those 3 votes, because clearly, I mean, I sat and watched as millions of Americans did, and Dr. Ford, I found, was compelling and totally credible. She answered every question, and we don't yet have the FBI report. We don't know what there is in the way of either exculpation or confirmation of her version of events. But for the president last night, again, to use this as an applause line in a political speech, and even to mischaracterize it. I mean, he talked about she can't remember where the house was, and all the mocking of she can't remember. What she did remember was being pushed into a room, pushed onto a bed, someone on top of her trying to take her clothes off, putting his hand over her mouth, and she remembered that it was Brett Kavanaugh. And she also, as you know, vividly remembered these 2 guys, these young guys, being drunk and laughing at her. Now, the president didn't mention that that's what she remembered, but I happened to meet with a sexual assault survivor from Maine the night before that testimony, and the emotion and the nature of her report was remarkably similar. Her attack happened in a car. She didn't remember what kind of car it was, exactly where it was parked,
yeah.
But she knew what happened to her, and it had a long time ago, but she remembered it vividly. And I've talked to other women that have been through these experiences, and they have a vivid, clear memory of what happened. And to mock her last night, like the president did, he's dividing us into tribes. And last night was the most basic tribe of all, men and women. He's trying to set us against each other. And let's try to get to the bottom of the facts. But what he did last night doesn't contribute to that pursuit at all.
Do you think that Friday is enough time for the FBI to get to the bottom of the facts?
Well, I don't know, and I think that's going to be the big question is the report that we're going to get thorough? Did they follow the leads? Did they examine Brett Kavanaugh's calendar, for example, and try to track down Mark Judge's when he worked at the Safeway? Dr. Ford said he was there several weeks after the alleged attack. I think it's very hard to say. I think in some ways this vote may hinge upon the credibility of what the FBI did. I don't think there's much question that last weekend, the White House, and ironically, I'm not sure it was the president. The president tweeted Saturday night, "I want this, unfettered investigation." My understanding is officials in the White House, principally Don McGahn, the counsel, was restricting the investigation. I think Susan Collins and others persuaded them to open it up and make it a real investigation. But we're not going to know that until we see what they produce on Friday. But I think it's going to be important, or it may be a wash. It may show no particular evidence one way or the other. But my first question is going to be, was it a real investigation? Did they follow leads? How many people did they talk to? Yeah. And I think that's the big question.
Should it be made public?
Well, I think at least parts of it should. If there's something that is compromising information about a private citizen that has really nothing to do with this, or if a name's involved, you can always redact those things.
Yeah.
But I think if senators are going to be making their decision based upon this information, I think the public should know what it is that senators have seen and have learned.
So let's talk about Senator Susan Collins, your colleague from Maine, of course. Have you spoken to her about this?
I have. I've spoken to her several times, and I know Susan Collins very well. She really works issues. She does her homework. She talks to people. She has talked to Brett Kavanaugh twice. I tried to, by the way, several times. I think 2 or 3 times we requested a meeting from the White House. It never happened. By the way, I should say,
that?
I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I just never had the meeting, and I was waiting to have that meeting. But ultimately, I should have said this right at the beginning. I decided to vote against Brett Kavanaugh before any of the sexual assault allegations, before last week's hearing, based upon my view of what kind of judge he will make. I don't think he's the right guy for the Supreme Court. I won't bore you with my
No, I
long
remember.
statement.
I mean, we talked to you about that, and you laid out why you didn't think that he was the right person even before, I think, all of this. But
correct.
do you have a sense of which way Susan Collins is leaning?
No, I think she's going to do, I mean, this is a very, very hard decision, and I think she realizes that. And I've been in touch with her over the last couple of weeks, and I don't try to lobby her. I think she has to make her own decision. She knows, as I do, that this is a career-defining decision. This is a 30-year decision, and what he does on the Supreme Court, we're all going to have to live with if indeed he is confirmed. So all I can tell you is I have the deepest respect for Susan Collins and the manner in which she goes about making decisions like this. And I don't know. I don't know which way she's leaning, but I don't think the president helped her last night.
Can you characterize what Mainers want her to do? Do you know how your state is leaning on this?
Well, it's hard to characterize. I can tell you the mail and emails into my office were overwhelmingly on the no side, although in the last week or so there have been more positive. When I say overwhelmingly, I mean over 90%. I don't think that's an accurate poll. I think probably if there was a poll, it would be, I'd say, 60-40 against. I was up in Maine last weekend, as I am every weekend. The vast majority of the people that came up to me said, "Thank you for your no vote. You're doing the right thing." I had 4 or 5 people say, "No, we want you to vote yes." I did notice something interesting, Allison. There was an age breakdown. All of the people that urged me to vote yes were, I'd say, 55 and older, and all of the young people, literally all of the young people that I talked to from age 20 on were on the no side. I haven't seen any polls on that, but it struck me quite directly as I was talking to people. I got no people saying vote yes who were younger people. Now, I'm sure they're out there. I just didn't happen to run into them.
That is interesting. Look, your one-man polling service is interesting because maybe this is a generational divide. Maybe this Me Too moment is generational. And I mean, I think that we've seen other evidence of that. And I think it's interesting to hear what you're encountering in Maine. Very quickly, have you seen the exhaustive New York Times piece, investigative piece, on President Trump's wealth, and that, in fact, he was not just given a $1 million loan from his father to start his empire. He was given $413 million from the time he was about 2 years old to begin his empire. And what it shows is that the Trumps, in many ways, defrauded the government by not paying enough taxes on their wealth and sort of hiding it in various ways. Have you seen it, and is there anything Congress can do about this?
Well, you use the right term, is seen. I have seen it. I haven't read it or digested it. As you know, it's exhaustive. It's an extraordinary piece of journalism that I understand took over a year to compile. It certainly raises serious questions. Ironically, in my case, and I'm not a student of Donald Trump and knew him from watching him on TV and seeing his name on buildings, I always assumed that he had a great deal of his fortune came from his father one way or another. And that, by the way, there's nothing wrong with transferring money from one generation to the other. I think the question in this case was it done in such a way as to evade taxes? And I'm going to leave to the authorities, the IRS, the tax lawyers, the tax authorities in New York to make those kinds of judgments. But it's a very powerful piece. And by the way, Allison, this isn't going to hurt Donald Trump. he has developed a persona where his supporters, if he gets attacked by the New York Times, his approval rating among his supporters will actually go up. The truest thing he said in the campaign in 2016 was, if I shoot someone on Fifth Avenue in broad daylight, I won't lose any votes. And I think this is another case where, ironically, an expose of this kind, even assuming it's entirely valid, I don't think will significantly undermine his support, might actually help him.
Senator Angus King, we always appreciate you coming on New Day. Thank you.
Thank you.